Hello, my name is Alex Smetcher, and I'm presenting today on OJS and Metabase. A bit of an outline before I start. I want to answer the question, what is Metabase and how could it help OJS users? I want to talk about technical requirements, and I want to speak about some multi-journal hosting tools. And I want to make an ask for help. And because this is going to get a bit technically complicated later on, I want to start with the ask for help. This could be a potentially very useful tool to pair with OJS to allow for editors to explore their database, generate statistics, answer business intelligence questions using a really nice open source tool called Metabase. But in order to make it useful, I have to find users who are interested in exploring their data in OJS. So I'm going to outline some tools that can make that happen. But if you do want to explore this and engage with us on this subject, please do. A few groups coming together to pool some expertise, come up with some reports that are useful to most users, and then beat a path for us to be able to distribute a set of reports with OJS or with Metabase using this tool set. That would be really powerful, and I hope that some folks can see the potential from this presentation. So, first question, what is Metabase? This is from the website. Metabase is an open source business intelligence platform. You can use Metabase to ask questions about your data or embed Metabase in your app to let customers explore their data on their own. And then they've got this example dashboard, it's called, which has a bunch of different sort of trend lines and different reports. And obviously this is taken from some kind of a business thing. It's got revenues and number of visitors and so on. Think about this as a way to allow for an external tool to explore your OJS database. The OJS database has a tremendous amount of information in it. It's got your submissions, of course, your peer reviews, your editor stats, number of submissions per month. It's got your number of acceptance decisions, all sorts of crazy stuff. And we've only been able to tap into a little portion of that using the built-in statistics tools within OJS. So this will potentially open up that whole set of data to a lot of exploration. So how can it help OJS users? As I mentioned, OJS's built-in stats can only get you so far. Essentially, to make an OJS stats system in our software, we have to code those queries, the reports, the counter stuff. Some of that makes sense, like to build a set of counter reports that are going to generate scholarly publishing specific metrics like counter. We should do that in OJS. But as far as allowing for a tool to generally explore data and get outside of those reports, that's a whole other industry, business intelligence, and expecting that to be built into OJS on top of OJS is going to kind of limit how powerful that is. So to get beyond OJS, what's built in there, Metabase is a purpose-built business intelligence tool. There's a bunch of these. There's Cognos, there's Microsoft BI, and this one just happens to be open source and a very good tool. It makes creating reports and visualizations much easier than coding it yourself or using the OJS tools to code it. It allows for guided exploration of data. This is a very powerful feature. I'll show you a couple of examples of this later on. And no coding is required. Asterisk. Of course, you have to learn the tools to make them useful. At heart, we're still dealing with the database, and so some knowledge of databases is always useful. But the idea is here that you don't have to learn how to code SQL, and you can still generate reports and explore your data without needing to learn those tools. So, first demonstration, exploring OJS data. What I have here is I've got a demonstration of Metabase. This is what that tool looks like. And I've given it a view into a single OJS journal. And right out of the gate, without telling it anything about OJS, I've got this list of tables available. And if you've explored the OJS database, you'll see that these are familiar. It's already taken the kind of glued together names and made them more human readable. So, for example, there's the submissions table. I can click on it, and I can just browse the data right in here. And this is table view. It's not maybe super exciting, but I can go to the current publication. I can view this. And if there were multiple versions for this publication, I would see them listed here. Let's go back to the database and try putting together a little query. I'm going to create a new question. This is what they call a database query in this case. I'm going to start with the submissions table. I'm going to connect it to the publications table, which is here. Using the current publication ID, this gets me from a single submission to its current publication out of potentially several. I'm going to join that further on publication settings. And I'm going to choose the setting called publication settings. Setting name is going to be title. And I'm going to choose the title in the publication's current language. So I'm going to go from the submission language to the publication settings language. So just like that, if you know SQL, I've constructed a query, but I've done it all through point and click. And if I go ahead with this, I'll see now information about the submission and the publication, all the way down to information about the submission's title in this case. And there's a bunch of different titles here. This is all lorem ipsum because I've anonymized this database, but off you go. I'm going to give a second demonstration here, which is visualization, and there's a really powerful tool set for this. This is where I think the power of the tool really starts to show. So I'll go back into the very start. I'm going to go into my database. Let's see, I'm going to start with submissions. And I'm going to, well, let's actually start a new question here. Start on submissions. I'm going to summarize them by the, group them by count of the status. So we're going to group them by status. I'm additionally going to organize them by the submission date by month. And if I visualize this, it's going to give me a graph which I can then configure. I'm going to say I want this to be a, bar graph. And I'm going to want to stack them. So right there, I've now got, with just a few clicks, a summary of the submissions to this journal with their status. So you can see we have queued submissions, we have declined submissions. In this case, this journal doesn't actually have any published submissions. And I can see the trend line by month over the years. So that sort of thing is really easy to generate. And I can now save this. I'm going to call this my submissions report. And I'm going to add this to a dashboard. Let's create a new dashboard. And I can plunk this down, size it up, and add it alongside other visualizations into a real dashboard form. And this is what I showed on that first screenshot, where you have a lot of different views here glued together. So just with a few clicks, I've already generated a status report, a graph, and I've added the beginnings of a dashboard. So as you can see, this is a really powerful way to quickly be able to explore the data without knowing how a database works. And the key feature here I want to explore is that you can give this to your editors. If you were a site administrator, you can give this tool to your editors so they can explore their own data outside of OJS with some data security. So I want to talk for a moment before I go further about the technical requirements for this tool set. OJS, of course, is written in PHP. Metabase is written in Java, so you'll need to have a system that will support Java. It does require its own database, MySQL database or Postgres, and that's to store its own information. And it also connects to your OJS database, so you have to have a way for it to reach your OJS database. You can run this on your server, or you can run it through Docker. Either way works. My demonstration here is running using a local Java runtime and its own local MySQL database. I recommend that kind of approach, but it'll deploy in a number of different ways. So this is what you have to have in order to run it. Now, big red slide. This is about to get a little bit technical, but I want to run through some options for multi-journal hosting. Let me first motivate why it is we're going to do this. So a typical multi-journal scenario is that you've got one OJS installation running many journals, and all the journal data is kept together in one database. So this is a multi-journal OJS where you have multiple journals in one MySQL database. And the journal managers want to be able to explore their data. They want to create and save and extend and share reports like I just showed you. And they want to, well, we've asked folks for the kind of reports they've done from their database directly. And some cases they gave us reports that kind of extended the journal management process beyond the list of fields that were already in the OJS kind of journal management table. And we're hoping that the new submission lists in OJS 3.5 are going to meet this requirement, so it'll be less necessary to step outside of OJS, but that's one thing that we did hear from journal managers, that they want to do that. Now the site administrator wants to be able to administer this stuff easily. They don't want to be buried in trying to figure out additional support for these tools. They especially want data safety. This is the big thing here that we've had to work some tools up for. If you've got a multi-journal OJS, you can't simply throw Metabase at it and have the journal managers explore the data in Metabase, because you'll have a mix of data from different OJS journals, and that might be insecure. You certainly don't want a journal manager from journal A to look at peer review data from journal B. Okay, speaking of that partitioning, Metabase's commercial product does seem to have tools for data segmentation, and that would allow for you to protect journal accesses for one journal's data from another journal's journal manager. I have not assessed these. Metabase has both an open source product and they have a commercial product. And there are some features in the commercial product that the open source product does not have, and this data segmentation tool set is one of those things. I do support Metabase's right to sustain itself through value adds like this, as long as the open source product is provided in good faith. Metabase is a very good open source product. Now, I didn't assess the commercial tool because I only needed one small piece of what it offers, and most of our community is not going to be able to be in a position to pay for the Metabase commercial product, much like many of the OJS users out there don't support the project. But if you do find Metabase useful, please consider supporting it materially through pull requests, through the open source mechanisms for improving the software, through finance, through sponsorship, through supporting the commercial product if it's useful to you. But everything I'm about to demonstrate here is using the free product. So, multi-journal tools. I do have a GitHub repository. Currently it's there. I will move that over to the PKP repository sometime soon. And this is where these tools live. The strategy for this use case for offering journal managers to explore their journal within a multi-journal OJS is to use database views to isolate journals from each other. You have your database with your entire OJS set in it, and then we create some views to give a partial access to it from a different database, and we point Metabase to use that. Don't worry, I'll demonstrate how this works. It's not complicated to administer. So the first demo I'm going to give is setting this up. Now the first thing I've got to do is I've got to clear out the database I was working with here, so I'm just going to take a moment and delete those features, and then we'll recreate that same experience from scratch. So I'm just going to log in as my administrator. I'll go into the administration area of Metabase, and I'm going to remove that database here. So I have in fact two here. I've got the multi-journal install. This has got 100 odd journals in it, and this is the view I was looking at and exploring just earlier in the demonstration. That's for a single view from within that. So I'm going to clear this out, along with the saved question I had. And I'm also going to clean out the group that was created in the process. I'll walk through this in a second. Okay, so I've deleted those. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the Metabase tools repository and look at the README here. So this walks through things in more detail. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but essentially you'll need to create two Metabase API keys. Unfortunately, they're both called Metabase API keys, even though they're different kinds of API keys. So it's a bit confusing, but these tools will take you through which one you're supposed to be using. Then I have to run these steps here to set up the Metabase installation. So I'm going to go through these one at a time and recreate the environment we just looked at with a single view onto this multi-journal install. So first step I'm going to do is I'm going to take the command here to generate the views. And as I mentioned, this is what the tool we're using to be able to partition multi-journal OJS into a single. My journal path is like this, and I'll just try running this. What this does is generates a bunch of SQL that's going to create a series of views, including a database actually. It's going to start by creating a database and then create a series of views for specific tables that are going to take that multi-journal install, which in this case is called Cielo, and create a view just onto a single one of them. So if that looks good to you, I'm going to pipe that into MySQL to run the commands. Looks good. That's step one done. So step two, I'm going to use my first of two API keys to create the database in the Metabase interface using the Metabase API. So I need to adjust my API key here to one that I've created previously, which I do have here somewhere. There it is. And adjust my journal path. And what that's going to do is that's going to, in my admin interface, if I reload this, create within Metabase this database. So I've done step 2. Sorry, that was step 3. Next, we need to run a sync command here. And this is just to tell Metabase to have a little think, flush some caches, and get ready for the next step. Now, this is the second kind of Metabase API key. Again, the README covers this in detail. But in my case, I've used just this. Sorry, I forgot to check the journal path. There we go. So we'll rescan the database. Then we'll need to run a command here just to set some visibility on a couple of tables. I may actually combine some of these steps together, but for the moment they're separate. This README document will always give you the most recent kind of set of instructions. So again, we'll have to run a command. Step 6 is to resync the database as in step 4, so we'll rerun that command. Good. Okay. Now the next step here is going to run through a bunch of different configuration. And you don't need to know the details here, but if you're curious, what this does is sets up a lot of different foreign key relationships, enumerations, hides a bunch of the details of the database in favor of nicer labels. So rather than seeing a number 16 for role ID, you'll see the text manager. So when you run queries on the database and you explore the database, it just looks friendlier. And this is useful because the views don't tend to expose things like foreign key relationships that would be usually extracted by Metabase automatically, but also because OJS 3 doesn't have foreign keys, and so it's necessary for that to be configured somewhere. So this takes care of doing all that stuff. Again, these tools hide the complexity, but just to give you a sense of what's happening. So now I'll run that. There we go. Done. Okay. So if all has gone well, we should be good to start exploring this database. So I'm currently logged in as my administrator. I'm just going to log out as admin and log in again as a journal manager. Actually, sorry, I shouldn't have done that yet. Because my new account that I've created does have a group, but not a user in it yet. So I'm going to go into the admin settings here. Not only did we create a database, that's the Metabase demo here, we also created implicitly a group. And this is part of the access control stuff. We want to have each journal's access isolated from the other user's access. So what we do is every time we create a new database using these tools, we also create a group. And any user who's involved with this journal can go into this group. So if I go into permissions, I'm going to look at all users. I do already have this user. Sorry, I'm looking for people. Yes, some journal manager. This account already exists, but you can invite people arbitrarily using an email address here to join. The important thing is I want to associate a particular user with this new group. So for Metabase demo, for example. And now if I log in as this user, what you'll see is that this user only has access to that one database, the one that's their journal. This is important again because there might be multiple journals with multiple, different editorial boards and so on. So I only have access to this one particular user. And this is what you saw at the very start when I started demonstrating the data exploration. So that's how we create it. And as you can imagine, this user can create their own collection of statistics, and there can be multiple users who have access to this journal. All that stuff done through the Metabase administration area. So you can grow this out into a really complex, really rich environment. But the starting is nice and clean, and with the exception of those few commands we had to run to get there, not too complicated. Now the last thing I'll show is copying cards. So a card is what Metabase calls any of these things here: a question, a SQL query, not a dashboard, but a model, anything where we're basically describing how a query inspects the database and generates some data and maybe a visualization. You can imagine that it'll be useful when you set up a new journal to have the users of that journal get a series of different queries and visualizations and things that are theirs to have as a base, but then they can build outwards from, rather than having it be empty. So this tool here, this copy card tool, allows you to have an easy way of doing that. Basically what you do is you log in as, let's say, my administrator account. and you would set up in your analytics somewhere a series of different kind of basic queries. And this is the one that we saw before, but belonging to my administrator user. And this is actually a report, that same report on the entire 100 and some odd journal installation. So you can see here quite a bit of data. We're up to, 2,100 submissions in 1 month. And you can see a mix of published and declined and in progress. And in fact, these numbers are showing up here because we didn't configure this database with those handy labels to replace the numeric values. You can, of course, configure this as well. I just haven't done so. So what I want to do is I want to take this template of a report and I want to give access to that newly created account to that same report, but in a way that they can then own it and modify it and tinker with it. So it's a bit of a pre-configuration. So to do that, what I can do is use this copy card tool. First, what I need to know is what is the ID of the card I want to copy. And in this case, I can just hover over it. And maybe you can see at the bottom of the page, the URL is 82-submissions-with-status by month. So the 82 is the numerical ID. That's the part I want. So I'm going to just go in, copy this command. I'm going to modify the API key to be the right value. I've lost my API key. It's here somewhere. Just get it from before. There we go. There we are. Give it the right demo name. And the ID was 82, I think. 82, that's correct. Okay. So what that will do is that's going to take the source schema and the target schema, map the schema information so that we're not referring to the main installation here with the multi-journals, but in fact just the copy of it. And then we're going to give that copy to the new user. So I'm going to log out now, go back in as my journal manager. And in this case, I have 2 copies now of this. And of course, you wouldn't normally have this one on the main database where somebody could see it, but that's just a configuration issue. You see here that we've got 82 as the one we had before, and now we've got one called 87. And this one, 87, is just reporting on my journal statistics. So we've taken a copy, applied it to this subset, and now this person can work with it. In fact, they can show the editor, they can tweak it, they can save it as a new version, they can modify the visualization, they can do whatever they want. So that should give a tool set for you to be able to give your journal managers access to explore the data, to have a preset list of queries that they can work with, visualizations, and have them then go off on their own and answer their own data questions. So next steps. As I mentioned at the beginning, we need some help with this. I would love for folks to see the potential of this tool set and to help us to establish what a good baseline report is, set of reports for journal managers to use that might build on the existing OJS reports, but add value. Things like trend lines for number of submissions coming in. You can do great reports on what countries the authors come from. You can do maps, all kinds of things. Lots of things to explore. It's a very powerful system. It just needs to be connected to the various bits of data in OJS and show its promise, basically. So if you're interested in participating, please contact me at the email address there, or better yet, participate in our support forum. Just make sure you mention Metabase and OJS. And I'm hoping that within a few months of this, we can have a bit of a sub-team ready to talk about stats, ready to start playing with this tool set, and then to put the results out to the world for folks to really start to expand their use of statistics. I'd like to give thanks to Cielo. Cielo's initiative here was what originally started us off down this path. We did a software selection. We looked at what the existing tools out there could do, and landed on Metabase as a very, very good open source tool. They've been supporting us materially in this work, and they've also been providing some very good feedback. They're quite informed on what the editor's needs are, more so in fact than we often are, and have been very good at bouncing ideas off of and getting some feedback. I also want to thank Metabase. As I say, it's a very high quality, free and open source business intelligence tool. Business intelligence is big money. There are some very expensive tools out there to do these things. We want to serve the whole open source community, and often that community is limited resourced. In this case, your barriers to entry are simply running a Java tool. I know that's not available to everyone, but at least it's very affordable and it's very high quality software. So I really want to give my credit to the Metabase team. Please get in touch. Thank you very much for your time.